Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another weekly Sunday episode. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping here. Make sure you guys are subscribed if you haven't already subscribed, and hit the bell so you guys are notified every time we go live or put out new content. And make sure you consider becoming a Patreon member or a YouTube member by hitting join down below. Also, just so you guys know, this episode is sponsored by Arabic Grammar Unlocked. It is a book that helps you understand the grammar of the Arabic language if you're having trouble with that. It is based on the classical text Al-Ajrumiyya, which is used to study and to break down grammar. So the link for this book will be down in the description. So make sure you check it out. It is on Amazon. There are some reviews here. For example, one here, I started my journey 10 years ago to study Quranic Arabic grammar. I wish that this book was available at that time. Arabic Grammar Unlocked is an exceptional resource. I highly recommend it. So make sure you go to Amazon and check out the reviews and purchase it if you think that it is going to be helpful for you. All right, with that stuff out of the way, today we are going to be bringing on a special guest, a repeat guest. My brother Bashir, who is an ex-Ahmadi, some people say Qadiani, but he is an ex-Ahmadi, and he has been a vocal opponent of the Qadiani or Ahmadi movement. And we're going to bring him back on. So welcome back, my brother. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back, brother Bashir. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I'm back.
All right, welcome back, man. So I think we're going to talk about a couple of things. So just the non-disclaimer here. We originally planned to have a kind of a debate, but unfortunately that fell through because the other party began using some legal language, and I didn't feel comfortable being involved in some type of a legal threat that was going on. I didn't think it was safe to do that, because if they were claiming someone was being harassing them and things like that, and all of a sudden they want to do a show with them, right? I mean, how does that even look, right? So it just seemed like we're dabbling with like this legal nonsense that could get anybody in trouble. And so I figured, what the best thing to do is to not, until you guys can resolve that. I actually emailed the other party and said, if once you guys resolve that, then, we can bring you back on the show, but I'm not going to have some kind of, legal trouble because of the fact that you feel uncomfortable. So unfortunately that didn't happen, but we were going to talk about some of the allegations that have been brought against you ever since you came on my show. I think people have been, that show got a lot of popularity, and other people started getting riled up. People, Ravi and the other guy, what's his name? The ex white nationalist, Brandon, or what? Damon. Double digit Damon. He got really excited, and he came in and joined and came in really aggressive. Like, what's up? And then Twitter just exploded, man. I mean, Twitter, people were going back and forth, throwing shade, family members involved, digging up stuff in the past, trying to, make allegations. And then on top of all this, we've got none other than Qasim Rashid, who's running for office. And we're going to tie all this in to why nobody should be celebrating Qasim Rashid because he has a Muslim sounding name, right? He is not good for the Muslims, right? And in general. But let's get into the first part of this show. So what are some of the allegations that were made against you that you feel like right now that you want to first clarify? Because I know that, it's hard to get everything off on Twitter in 240 characters. So let's start with that first.
Sure. And it's the same thing that Damon was saying when he called in. So I'm not going to say his name. Let's just call him Kiki. It's a family member, and I worked for him when I got out of the Air Force. I actually built his business for him and took care of, I helped him get money. You know what I mean? And he's never gotten money after, before, he's never gotten it. So he started telling people in 2005 that I don't know how to read the Quran, which is the strangest thing because I learned with him. We learned it together. So how do you go and tell people this guy doesn't know the Quran when you learned with him, and we had the same teacher? In fact, I'm the muezzin. I'm the one who gave the azan and woke him up, and he couldn't wake up for Fajr. And I'm a robot in a computer. I'm passionate too. When I'm an introvert and an extrovert. So I just thank Allah. But I learned with the guy. We learned the same script. We memorized the same ayah. And then he started spreading these rumors about me behind my back. So he won't say it in front of me, and he never did because he's scared. He's scary. I don't know why he's scared of me. I'm too old to be doing anything physical with anyone. I don't like, even when I play basketball and I foul a guy, I'm trying to talk him out of it. I'm like, no, brother, I didn't do it. I didn't mean it. I apologize. I don't want to take it there. I have too much to lose. So, and then in 2012, he hired other employees who were Ahmadi, and they were saying the same thing to me. They were saying, "Oh, can you read the Quran?" And I would just not understand, where is this coming from? Why? Why? Who told them all of this stuff? Well, maybe I was Boo Boo the Fool or something. I don't know, but they were all talking about me behind the scenes. He doesn't know Quran, so they were trying to discredit me and all of my questions. So that's the main allegation. And it's funny because then he says about the Urdu language, you have to read Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's books in Urdu to understand them. And he says no one else can understand. Well, then all the Ahmadis in Africa, knock them out. Why are they even Ahmadi? Because they haven't. Damon Stengel can't read Urdu. He can barely read Arabic. Barely. The Khalifa can barely read Arabic. So this is just the ridiculousness with which Kiki is operating. And he's been told by his Khalifa to do all this. These are the main allegations that they use. And in fact, they call the ulama as not muttaqeen. They say we're not righteous, so we can't even understand the Quran. So why does it even matter? It's like, okay. And then Kiki just did a show, and this guy on his show, Tariq Chaudhry, says he says, hey, the companions couldn't read the Quran. Muhammad, peace be upon him, couldn't read. He had it all memorized. So he even says, the Khalifa's Friday sermons are in Urdu. The majority of Ahmadis can't even understand what he's saying. So there it is, brother. Oh, I think you're muted. Brother, can you take the mute off?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Thank you. Yeah. Let's take a pause there for a minute. So the thing is, man, first of all, the argument that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not know how to read and write. First of all, that was his part of his prophecy, meaning that was part of the miraculous nature of how the Quran was revealed, because people around him knew that he was illiterate and he was not able to read and write. So there's no way he could have just written these things down or come up with this type of stuff. He couldn't read other people's literature. He couldn't write it down and compile this. But that doesn't apply to human beings, because the fact is that he's given direct wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that the angel Jibril came to him, and this is part of revelation. But the fact that the reality is this: Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew Arabic, right? So he wouldn't make the same mistake over the word khatim as these people are making, right? I mean, he knew the basics of the word, and he knew what the Quran meant. Unlike these people whose lacking of whose misunderstanding and ignorance of the Arabic language and deliberate mistranslations intentionally and unintentionally misguide people. And that's the difference. So do not compare this guy, MGA, to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the first mistake they're making. All right. And then the idea that Urdu being the mother tongue, now that's fine. There's nothing wrong with Urdu being the mother tongue of somebody. I mean, Urdu is a wonderful language. There's many books written about Islam in Urdu, and we've benefited greatly from those books. I guess the Ummah has. But the fact of the matter is that if you are going to claim to be someone who can represent the the Ahmadi Khalifa or whatever MGA, in order to be familiar with his works, you would have to be familiar with the Urdu language, right? And if you're not familiar, it's like saying, listen, I can go and give the tafsir of the Quran, but I don't know Arabic, right? It doesn't make sense, right? You can rely on the English translations, but unfortunately, things are lost in translation. Likewise, with the Urdu language, right? You're not going to be able, and not everything is translated, right? There are many books, even in Sunni Islam, right? There are many books of a hadith and explanations of a hadith or books around jurisprudence that are not translated into the English language. And so that limits your capacity in understanding, because you're not the availability of that material is not there. Likewise, the same would probably be true for the writings of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. If you're going to claim to defend him and claim to know what the arguments are, how can you be sure when you can't read what he's putting out there?
Exactly. And Kiki, my family member, he can't read Urdu. So how does, and I'm telling you, I found an email from 2005 where I that's the question I'm asking. How do you guys even know who he was? Because we couldn't even read anything that he wrote until, there was a bunch of books that came out in '04 and '05. So I read all the English books. They purposely mistranslate. Like there was a new book published in English called Haqiqatul Wahi, and Mirza Ghulam Ahmad used the Arabic word majaz. I'm a prophet via majaz. Everyone knows that means metaphor, right? It's from Arabic. It means metaphor. I've looked it all up. They mistranslated it into something else because it's embarrassing. So and Kiki, he did a video and he says a Hatam in chapter 2 verse 7 is different than Hatam in 3340. He says the Hatam in Hatam and Nabiyyin is different from the Hatam in Hatam Allaho, right? But it's the same word. It's the same core. So how's this guy going to tell me I don't know Arabic when he's making the biggest fundamental mistake? Like, what are you talking about? I've looked it up, brother. Hatam is used in 7 or 8 forms in the Quran. It always means a permanent sealing off. So,
yep, no, absolutely. Khatim means something to be, sealed off, or to be like to indicate that it is the ending of, or meaning it's the finishing of, the conclusion of, right? You can use that in many different terms. The problem is that they take the different, as you know, the Quran is revealed in different qira'ah, or different ahruf of the Quran.
right.
So the problem with that is you can take the meaning of that, or the pronunciation of that word in a different qira'ah and apply it to the hafs meaning or the standard meaning, and it would mean a different word. But in that dialect, it means the same thing as, khatim or khatam. It's the same thing. I mean, but because the dialect is different, they both mean, but you can't take the dialectical differences and then apply that to the standard dialect that you would understand, for example, in Hafs or Qurayshi dialect. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, oh, it means, and they add this stipulation about law giving, law bearing prophet. Where do we get this from?
Right.
It doesn't mention anything about the law in the verse. It has nothing to do with law bearing. Right? It doesn't have anything to do with that. Right? And then they go on in the books and they go, oh, Khatim al-Faqih, or people put this on their graves and stuff. Yeah, but again, that's talking about people in terms of like their in their field and what they're doing in reverence to them and respect, right? The Quran is not trying to revere the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's simply making a statement, and it makes it a very clear statement that Khatim al-Nabiyyin, meaning of the prophets. Not just of the Rasul, all, because every single, and this is for the benefit of the people watching right now, every single Rasul is a Nabi, but not every single Nabi is a Rasul. So what that means is every single messenger is a prophet, but not every prophet is a messenger. And a messenger comes with laws, right? With a book or scripture, and the prophet comes with just the message of Tawheed, essentially, and inviting people to what was a previous law or what is to be coming. And so the Quran does not make a distinction. It says that he is the finality of prophethood. So there can be no messenger because every prophet is every messenger is a prophet. So if there's no prophet, I mean, you can't be a messenger without being a prophet. It doesn't make sense. So
Right.
there's no question about this. There's no question. As a matter of fact, this was one of the reasons why people, even like Musaylim al-Kadhab at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was fought, because if there was a possibility of having another prophet, why would they even have even been so offended by this? Right? I mean, there's no again. I mean, there's not really an argument to be made here. This is only made to people who don't really understand the general context, and that they will essentially they will use other texts that will confuse them. Like they'll take little bits and pieces of Bukhari and Muslim and say, "Oh, look, it says yatawaffa means this in this hadith, or tawaffa in the Quran in Jesus that and this." I mean, there's no solid answer from the Quran. So what we see is a complete, a cherry picking of events and words in order to formulate this far out there theology that no one had for almost 1400 years.
Yeah, and to put the icing on the cake, that they say at the end, Isa died in India, which is the most ridiculous thing. And I'll tell you, Kiki, when he would do a dawah to our customers, he wouldn't tell them that at the beginning. He would tell them that Jesus is dead, and I'd ask him, when are you going to tell this guy? He's came 3 times. When are you going to tell him that we believe he died in Kashmir? He goes, no, you don't tell them that till the end. I was like, oh, so I never did it. I never did the at your own business dawah. So a few things. I've actually researched Rasul and Nabi, and Yasser Qadi has an amazing video on it. He says there were 4 opinions on it, but none of them make sense. The one, not none of them, 3 of the 4 don't make sense. The 4th one by Ibn Taymiyyah makes sense, and that means a Rasul was sent to a hostile people, and they were given punishment. Whereas the Nabi is sent to people who already believe in most cases. And I'm working on the essay. So check this out. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad claimed to be both from the beginning, and didn't give an explanation as why he's getting revelation saying he's a Rasul. So remember, even Isa alayhi salam is one of the top 5 Rasul, Nabi humans ever. You know what I mean? There's a verse where it talks about the top. So he was claiming exactly that. And then he claimed to be superior to Isa alayhi salam, na'uzubillah, superior to Yusuf, all these guys. So okay, that brings me to chapter 2, verse 4. They translated, so the word unzila happens in that verse twice, but the 3rd time it's akhira, not unzila. They were so desperate to prove that more prophets could come, they purposely mistranslated that to say the revelation to come, right? And Noman Ali Khan has a great video on this. So and then one more story. Remember, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was 55 years old. He claimed to be the Messiah, but he didn't know Arabic. And Mirza Ghulam Ahmad admitted to it. Then his buddy, Nuruddin, who's the main ghostwriter, moves into his house, and 20 years later, they say he learned Arabic in 1 minute, in one night. It took 1 minute, and then they got 20 books published in Arabic and put his name on it and said he wrote them, right? Then in 1900, they falsified a not even a lecture. It was after Eid that they claimed that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad stood up and gave something called Hutbah Ilhamiyah, which was a revelation from angels. He said he was reading these tablets that were in front of him, and he doesn't even know what he wrote. So they went out of their way to prove that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad knew Arabic, brother. So there it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are now. Look, let's be objective for a moment. Is it possible that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala could give someone knowledge of Arabic in overnight? Of course, it's possible. God can do anything. But what we look at is the material he's saying, does that line up with what the Quran says? I mean, we know for a fact that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a prophet. There's no doubt about this in anyone's mind. If you're a Muslim, that's a fact, right? We know that the Quran says that there will be no more prophets after him. Actually, we even have, and it's funny because they will quote a hadith from Bukhari and Muslim, as they claim and they do this because they try to act like, oh, they follow the same madhab and they have the same hadith collections and all this stuff, right? But they pick and choose from it, because even in Bukhari there are numerous hadith which are actually not even reference to finality of prophethood, but you can see in the example. For example, if there were to be a prophet after me, it would be Umar ibn al-Khattab, but there's no prophet after me. La nabiyyi ba'd. There's no prophet after me, right? If you, for example, in a reference to Ali radiallahu anh, you are like me to me, like how Aaron was to Moses, but there is no prophet after me, right? So, I mean, even in plain speech, we see this. So, if anyone was deserving to be a prophet after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wouldn't it have been someone like Ali, someone like Umar, someone like Khalid bin Walid, someone like, Umar bin Abdul Aziz? I mean, you can go on and on and on and on. So many people that have, decimated Mirza Ghulam Ahmad in caliber, in understanding of religion and dedication to religion, not some guy who was licking British boots for a few pounds, right? I mean, this is like, there's no, I mean, let's be honest for a moment, right? Why would I believe? And then this notion that Isa alayhi salam went to India. Now, why would anybody want to believe this? I mean, is it possible he could have gone? Yes, of course it's possible. But where's the historical evidence? We don't have. All of this is conjecture. We don't base our religion on conjecture, right?
Right. And I'll tell you what's worse. Sorry to interrupt. Not only do they claim he went to India, they say he died at age 125. So after the event of crucifixion, he lived 90 years. They're claiming he lived 90 years, and they found the grave. There's a grave by a local prince, a local son of a king named Yuz Asif, and we did the research and we double checked it. We found the book that they refer to. He was the son of a local king. He's not Isa. This is before Islam came to Kashmir. This is before, you know what I mean? So it's even more ridiculous than you guys can imagine, brother.
Yeah, and not only that, like, this idea also, it comes from also some early sects of Christianity, where they believe that Jesus continued to live on and had a normal life, and he had children, and he lived some obscure life. And there are certain sects of Christians today, offshoots of Christianity, that believe that they are the children of the Messiah. So, like, they actually believe they carry the holy name of God and blah blah blah. Like, they come from the lines of Jesus and Yeshua, and it's all nonsense, right? We as Muslims know that Allah has raised Sayyidina Isa to the heavens to himself, and there are some scholars who have said that he passed away, and that he will return. But even the ones that believe that he passed, a minority opinion, they say that happened right away. It's not like it was
90 years later. And what they say is, what they're essentially saying is, for travel at light speed times a million, which is what it would take to get to Jannah from Earth, Allah caused him to die for a split second, and then, probably revived them, because everyone in Jannah is alive. If you show up to Jannah and you're dead, you're not going to be dead anymore. You see what I mean? So there's no dead people in Jannah. It's just not possible. There's no gravity. There's no sunbeams to make us age, and etc. And the verse 5:117, where Isa says, "I was amongst them until you took me." So that makes sense if he was taken at age 33, but 90 years later, that it would falsify the entire verse. So
yeah, it did. I mean, there's so many parts of the narrative when you put it all together. it doesn't make sense when you apply it. Like, if you took bits and pieces and try to apply it, you could maybe cause some doubts on someone's belief or story. But when you put it all together, you're like, wait, what? Like, it's just you got to be high, bro, to believe this stuff. Like, literally. There's no way that you.
On one. You really got to be on a good one.
Yeah, like a purple drink or something. And that's another thing. That's funny because they accuse you of being drunk all the time,
Yeah.
and this is pretty much drunk theology. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, dude, look, and it's funny because Damon asked Kiki on his show, and Kiki said, "I've never seen him drunk. I've never seen him drink." And I lived with the guy when I was like 26, 27. You know what I mean? Everyone knows, dude. I am the opposite of that. I've never had Chinese food. Listen. I might tell a white lie if I'm somewhere and if I'm at somebody's house and they ask me they want to serve me some food and it's some meat. I might say, brother, like I might, you know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna be rude and say, brother, just no. But I'll figure out a way out of it. I'll talk my way out of it into something else. So, but that's just like common courtesy. You don't, if someone offers you something, you don't spit in their face. You gotta figure out a way to respectfully talk your way out of it, and that there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, and look, all these guys know I'm an athlete. I play all the time: football, softball, baseball, you name it. I'm all about the push-ups. Man, I don't eat. I used to eat the same food daily. I'm not a foodie. I'm not a connoisseur. Like, brother, at the local masjid, the local imam fed me some couscous or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, and I couldn't eat it. And I'm trying to be respectful. I'm trying to get it down. You know what I mean? But I'm not experimental when it comes to food, especially anything sour. I grew up at a liquor store. Okay, so my dad had this tire shop. Next door is a liquor store. So I saw people drink. I'd ask them, how does it taste? They say, oh, it's sour. Because I'd see him drink it. I used to see this one guy drink a Cisco, pound a Cisco. He'd walk into the store, pound a Cisco, throw it in the trash, and walk back to the projects. And I say, brother, when after you drink it, I see this scowl on your face, like, does it not taste good? He says, no, it's sour, it's nasty. So I said, oh, okay, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna be tasting that at all, like ever, right? So yeah, it's ridiculous, brother.
I think it's part of the narrative, right? Let's just make ad hominems, and then so we can not deal with the arguments. So let's talk about something else because we're already halfway into the show. So this is going to tie back to Qasim Rashid. Now, Qasim Rashid is running for those of you that don't know, he's running for Congress out of VA, right? In Virginia. Is it Congress that he's running for?
Yeah, he's running for the House. He's running for the House.
Representative. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So remember, he ran for Senate 2 years ago and got destroyed. He's not going to be.
Now he's running for his district. Because for those of you who are not in America, the House of Representatives has each district has its representation. So the larger you are, each district has its, depending on the population size of the state. So he's running for a district, which is within Washington, D.C.
District 1. No.
I'm sorry. Yeah, because DC doesn't get representation. So right. So it's Virginia, District 1 in Virginia. And so one of the reasons why this is problematic is because some of our Pakistani brothers are saying, well, this is such a great achievement that a Pakistani, first time Pakistani is running, and he's going to make headway. I just want to put it out there that this is not the first time a Pakistani has run for the House or in the district. There have been many places, even in Chicago and other places where there's, but maybe he's making mainstream news because he's been on some shows before, and he's also tied with some organizations that are more nationally recognized. But one of the reasons why we want to talk about this is because he is no friend to the Muslims. or to the general Pakistani people or who are there. The Ahmadis have their own caucus that is apart from the Sunni traditional Muslim agenda,
Representation. Yeah.
representation agenda, right? They have the idea of victimhood, that we have to tell everyone that we are victims of abuse and rape and torture and subjugation, and we are refugees because these other Pakistanis, or quote Sunnis, are the ones that are abusing us, and so we're having there's a genocide of us, and so they conveniently appeal to us when they want our vote, right? For when under the guise of unity and brotherhood and progress, but behind closed doors, they're out there basically telling the opposition that we are the ones that are violent and extremists, and we're the ones that are responsible for being radical, and that's why they need to support those kinds of Muslims. Is that not true?
That is exactly true. Qasim Rashid was saying that Muslims who don't accept Ahmadis as Muslim are terrorists. This was their narrative. Rob Whitman posted an expose video on Qasim Rashid. It's hilarious. So yeah, they have their own agenda. It's persecution. In America, they're the older Ahmadis that came here 20, 30 years ago are slowly passing away. The younger generation has ran off. I'm one of them. And look, Kiki says I'm leading everyone astray. He called me Satan because I'm leading them astray. And I just post the information, brother, and then it's up to Allah to guide them or not. Like I know most Ahmadis are agnostic atheists as it is. Even Kiki, he doesn't believe, it's all for show. But yeah, that's definitely what they're doing. He had the Khalifa's approval. He was their national spokesman for 4 or 5 years. No one knows where he works at. You know what I mean? The Ahmadiyya Mosque in Virginia's first district is Masroor Mosque. He's probably the local president. Same thing with Kiki. Kiki won't admit what her position is in the Ahmadiyya movement. They all have to go unofficial. They all say they're unofficial for legality. And that goes back to his legal stuff. They are legal. They're not playing. They're looking for any trip up we make. He said in one of his emails, why do you make fun of Damon or something? Or Damon himself said he's autistic. So my only question is, why is he on the internet if he's autistic and he's harassing people? These are some red flags. That's all I said. I want the brother to get some help. So yeah, brother, they're playing all these games with us, with the ummah, that they pretend to be cool, but really they're not.
Well, that's the thing, because I'm okay with having a discussion, but if you're gonna be deceitful like this and say, "Oh, brother this, brother that," don't tell me that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, I don't. People who want to disseminate lies about me are really not my brothers, and that's fine. You can think that way about me too. I mean, You can. They might want to think that I'm not. They might want to think that I'm spreading lies against them, and they don't have to call me brother. I don't care. It wouldn't bother me at all, right? I don't expect you to. I mean, because I don't believe that me and you are the same, right? So why would I call you brother, right? We're just not the same. We have different ideas. Sure, we're brothers in humanity. I mean, we're all Bani Adam, but in terms of religion, no, we're not the same people, right? You clearly have an agenda, and you want to be able to, I guess their idea is to downplay or to insult traditional Sunni Islam in order for them to survive and to get funding. So let's talk about that for a moment as well too. It has been said that the Ahmadiyya community, some parts of it, I don't know about in its official capacity, but some groups among the Ahmadis have worked with and received funding from CVE in the American government, where and for those of you that don't know, CVE is countering violence and extremism, and there are programs of quote outreach by the U.S. government where they will give grants to groups that will claiming to be, moderate and standing up against this terrorism. But in mostly what it ends up being is they get paid to spy on the community and pass over information anytime they want, like basically information and intelligence gathering is what it becomes. So is there any, are you aware of any of the of this? Have you heard of any of these things where they work with local or maybe federal officials to try to entrap other Muslims or Sunni Muslims?
Absolutely. Ever since their inception, they worked with the British government. They even sent some of their imams to Russia, and their imams were arrested for
Oh,
spying. And this is in the 1920s. Um, During World War One, they were allowed to send their murabbis to East Africa, into British colonies, and the British gave them property, gave them a location, and that they wanted them to lead the prayer. They did the same thing in the Gambia. They did the same thing in Ghana. They're getting government money in the Ghana, Nigeria to build schools, build hospitals. Their charity is humanity first in America. Their budget is like 4.5 million. They built a hospital in Guatemala with that money. And Humanity First is working as their arm. So it's funny, in America, the Khalifa's brother, his elder brother, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, is in charge of the entire American Jamaat. He's also in charge of Humanity First, and he gets
mhm.
no salary. So just like Trump puts his people in charge of Department of Education, they're playing the same game, brother, the same game. They'll hire an MD. One of the MDs were hired. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's grandson was hired as an executive director at the World Bank, 1971. Brother,
Wow,
a
impressive.
Pakistan. So remember, the World Bank has basically put the world in debt. Remember that.
Yeah.
After World War II, and it's headquartered where? In Washington D.C. So the American strategy, which I'm an American too, but the strategy was, let's put everyone in debt. So they gave everyone loans. So now we can control you because you're in debt. Where are you going to go? And then they need to find a trustee. So we know we got one out of these guys. So the grandson of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad went over there and handled business. In the United Nations, Zafrullah Khan was their go-to guy who got the job done. In Pakistan, he was also the foreign minister, right? So as they hold these positions, they're also in charge of the local jamaats. They're also in charge of the regional jamaats. So, brother, they got their hands in the pie from all sides. Their theology doesn't work. The young kids are leaving. So this is their strategy for advancement, brother.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the way I see it. Like they're just trying. Okay, I know early on in the late '90s, I believe it was. Yeah, late '90s, there was involvement where they would come in front of congressional hearings and they would try to talk about who is radical, what Muslims we should focus on as far as the government, what Muslims they should be aware of, what and how what the risk is. And it was them and some other group as well to the Naqshbandi Sufi group that was around too. They did the same thing where they would do that. You know what? Let me just go ahead and share this screen here. So this is actually um, Congresswoman Jackie Spear. Okay, and it says Congressional Ahmadiyya Muslim Caucus co-chair Jackie Spear and Pete King celebrate the caucus launch for the 115th Congress. Congressional Ahmadiyya Muslim Caucus co-chair Jackie Spear. I'm sorry. And Pete King released the following statement today in celebration of the launch of the caucus for the 115th Congress. Today, over 100 members of the Ahmadiyya community are gathered for their seventh annual day on the Hill and launched the Congressional Ahmadiyya Muslim Caucus for the 115th Congress as co chairs of the United States As co-chairs of the Congressional Ahmadiyya Muslim Caucus, we commend the efforts of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in the United States for spreading Islam's true teachings of moderation and restraint with compassion, patience, and prayers in the face of bitter opposition. The Congressional Ahmadiyya Muslim Caucus was formed in 2014 to highlight the religious and human rights abuses regularly suffered by members of the Ahmadiyya community across the world. Today, the caucus continues to press onward toward the ultimate goal of societal and religious freedom for this oppressed society. We represent a bipartisan effort to advocate on behalf of oppressed Ahmadi Muslims, consistent with the objectives of the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998. We remain extremely concerned about the persecution of Ahmadi Muslims worldwide. In Pakistan, in particular, they have suffered for decades as victims of sectarian violence and state-backed institutionalized discrimination. Under the 1974 Constitution, Ahmadi Muslims were considered to be non-Muslim, and in 1984, Pakistan enacted the so-called, quote, blasphemy, end quote, laws that target Ahmadi Muslims. Ahmadis account for almost 40% of all arrests under the blasphemy laws. Ahmadis are also disenfranchised, and in order to vote, they must declare either they are non-Muslim or sign a statement denouncing the founder of the Ahmadiyya community as a false prophet. The struggle of the Ahmadiyya community is one nearly every American has some connection to. Religious freedom is enshrined in our Constitution as a basic human right, and America has always idealized the concept of religious acceptance. As we relaunched the Congressional Ahmadiyya Muslim Caucus, we remain committed to shining a spotlight on instances of persecution and oppression faced by the Ahmadiyya community. Now, here's the problem. What is what is the issue here is that the problem here we have with this is this here. One second, let me stop this. So the problem is that when they are the ones that are oppressing the minorities, right? That's the problem, right? So now they're talking about how they embrace American ideologies and they want to go ahead and, how these concepts are enshrined in our Constitution and that we stand for these rights. But the minute they had the upper hand in a community like in Arabwa, what happened to the people who wanted to leave?
Right. So they're playing. All they're doing is playing.
It's lip service.
Yeah. Total lip service, brother. It's been happening for years. Qasim Rashid is their poster child. Kiki is another one. He had to earn it. You know what I mean? He had to snitch on his brothers and then snitch on a bunch of people. And they're like, okay, we trust you. You know what I mean? Qasim Rashid, his dad was a Murabbi. So like, yeah. Of these guys whose dads are Murabbis are way more trusted.
Oh, yeah, because
Yeah.
And plus, they get some kickback too, don't they? I mean, I'm sure they do, right? If you're a Murabbi,
the Murabbi's kids get free college. So I'm not. So maybe not law school, huh?
No, but that's really to be honest, that's really in interest of them, because when you make prominent or highly educated young people who get into positions like Qasim Rashid being a lawyer or being a doctor, you have places of influence that then they are able to then claim, oh, look at the Ahmadiyyas, look at the difference that we've made in the world, right? These are the kinds of efforts and initiatives that we have, right? So it's really an investment in their own expansionism.
Exactly. And they have programs too where they didn't give me any money, that's for sure, because I was in protest the whole time. They really had a problem with me. And now that I think about it, it's probably because Kiki was going behind my back and telling them, this guy is bad, and I'm working for the guy. I'm making this guy thousands and thousands of dollars a month behind my back. He's saying this and he's saying that about me. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's just I feel like that. So the bottom line is, to be honest, that we've got to understand that the Ahmadi community has their own caucus. They have their own agenda. When they come up to our face and say, "Hey, listen, I'm Pakistani, you're Pakistani, or you're Muslim, I'm Muslim. Let's go ahead and have this vote for me. I'll represent you." They're saying that and with one face to you, but when they have their own private meetings with, by the way, Senator Pete King, by the way, who is, by the way, a very anti, he is an Islamophobic person.
yeah,
Uh, the King of New York is very Islamophobic, and the fact that he would endorse the Ahmadiyya caucus is very telling, right? Because that's the kind, they're happy with these kinds of quote Muslims who will happily try to make other Muslims look bad and say, you know what, those Sunnis are evil people and blah 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 blah. So keep in mind that they have, to your face they say one thing, but behind your back they're doing stuff in their own caucus for their own agenda under the guise and pretense of protecting minorities in Pakistan or whatever it is. But in reality, they're looking for every opportunity to make the Sunnis look like the bad guys, so they can have so they can come up and say, "Well, see, Ahmadiyya is correct. These guys are a total misinterpretation of Islam."
yeah, that is exactly correct. When I was in boot camp, Kiki found out that I was gonna go to the Islamic Center on base for Jummah. They told me I go to Jummah. I was happy. I go to Jummah. I can get out of this building, right? So
Yeah.
he never wrote me a letter. All of a sudden, he writes me a letter and says, "Don't go." And I was like, "What? What's going?" Oh yeah, I know of the directive, but he was like, "I gotta remind you. Do not go and pray with these guys. We're not with them." Brother, I remember going back in the 80s, there was only one other Muslim family in our town. It was just me and my five uncles, or like four uncles. There was one other Muslim family. We'd go to their house for Ramadan. It would be time for Maghrib or Isha, and we'd walk outside and stand outside, right? And it's a weird situation. Oh, you're muted still.
Am I muted? No, I
Oh,
think I'm good.
yeah,
No.
yeah, yeah. My bad.
Why was that? Why wouldn't you pray behind it? Oh, because you're not allowed to pray behind them. Is that why, as Ahmadis?
And these were their friends. This was family friends. It's not like you didn't know who they were. And they're still friends to this day. Like they still know my dad, that they still know Kiki, and they still won't pray behind them. They just cannot do it. So they've separated themselves from Islam. They hate Muslims. They call us all atheists. They say none of the ulama is righteous. They're not muttaqeen. We are
Yeah.
muttaqeen. So, well, why does he even want me to read the Quran when, in his opinion, I'm not righteous? Right? So it's like, what? Why? And I'll tell you a funny story. If you ever heard of Peer Mayor Ali Shah, he was a famous peer in the Punjab. He accused Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of not knowing Arabic, and he dared him to come to Lahore. And he said, "We just want you to recite the Quran. We don't believe you." And he didn't. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad did not show up. So they were with the British government. The British Empire didn't fully end. It's still here because they have Australia kind of sorta and Canada kind of sorta. So and that's where the Khalifa's hiding, man. And I've been on Qasim Rashid's Twitter, telling people, hey, as a veteran, I'm offended that he has a loyalty to a Khalifa who lives in the UK. How can you vote for a guy who this is his loyalty? It's not the
Right.
American people. So yeah.
Right. So we had a question here, real quick, in the comments section. Do they ever study the Quran and Sunnah?
Not exactly. They studied their own Quranic interpretations, and sometimes they quote the Hadith, and they just say a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. They don't say where it's from. For example, there was a hadith book out of India called Kanzul Amal. If you ever heard of that, that's what they quote when they say Isa lived to 125. It's like, because in that hadith, it's not even a hadith. In that alleged hadith, it said every prophet lives half the age of his predecessor. So so they infer, since Muhammad, peace be upon him, lived to 63, the prophet before him must have lived double. But then if you go through the argument, then Mirza Ghulam Ahmad should have only lived to 30. And
Right.
and that would mean Yahya alayhi salam would have been 240. So it's and I traced it back to Tabari and Tafsir of Tabar. So it's just the argument collapses, brother. What are they studying? Kiki didn't know. He's never read a Tafsir Ibn Kathir. You
Yeah.
never read to. You're saying you know Islam and you didn't read Tafsir Ibn Kathir? What are you talking about? It's like essential reading. Okay, so he's been talking about Shah Waliullah, who's the Mujaddid of the 12th century, right? And Razi responded to one of my videos, and he said that Shah Waliullah said that when the Mahdi comes, he'll be like the second coming of Muhammad, peace be upon him, na'uzubillah. So I look it all up. I look up the book. I can't even find the quote. There's an English edition of it. I can't find the quote because his books are in Persian, mostly in Persian. We're not reading it, right? So, or if we read it, it's going to be real slow with, you know what I mean? So in that book, Shah Waliullah endorsed the substitution theory. He said that Isa was physically lifted to heaven and he will physically return. So they're quoting Shah Waliullah out of context.
Yeah. And the problem is that a lot of the stuff that they talk about is only relevant to subcontinent Muslims. Like people outside the subcontinent, like they would laugh at this and be like, "What are you talking about?" If you, I don't know if you ever encounter that being an Ahmadi, but if you walk up to like an Arab or like even like a Malaysian Muslim or Indonesian, and you tell them about this stuff, they're like, "What are you talking about?"
Right. So here's what they did. Here's what they did, and this is important. They infiltrated Israel. They're in Israel.
Yeah, no,
They in after World War One, Kababir fell into British hands. They sent an imam there. He gets the whole village to convert to Ahmadiyya, and half of them have left by now, right? So that's their and so that's how they got into Israel. They got into Indonesia after World War II. They got into Malaysia after World War One. You know, so they find ways to infiltrate, to get in. You know, they didn't get into South Africa until later because South Africa was an apartheid government to begin with. You know what I mean?
You know what I find to be funny as well too, though, is I saw this one video where there was a Palestinian who is an Ahmadi, but the title of the video was Arab Sunni becomes Ahmadi, and it's deceiving because you would say, and when you talk about this, you're like, or when you hear the title, or at least from me understanding their perspective, they're trying to make it sound like that. Oh, even the Arabs who understand the language will accept Mirza Ghulam Ahmad as meaning that his arguments are credible. Like, oh yeah, his understanding of these words, and even though the works of his are from his ghostwriter, but these are actual, real. This makes sense to us. But in reality, these were just people who were, like you said, converted, became pretty much godless, and then somehow found a way back to it, right?
Right.
Perhaps they need some money or something, so they profess belief and probably got a check. I don't know. But anyways,
Yeah.
let me see this.
Yeah.
Fed-
So their best Qari was a guy named Hani Tahir, who was from Egypt or Israel. He quit. He famously quit Ahmadiyya like 2-3 years ago. They were all shocked. They were all shocked by this. He was their Qari. He was like their best guy with the Tajweed too. So
Well, I mean, if you recite the Quran and begin to understand it, I mean, you develop an understanding of the Quran, you're going to obviously reject that nonsense, right? He probably began to study the linguistics of it and the grammatical importance of it, and that probably led him to believe, hey, what you've been telling me is a lie. This is not
well,
true.
well, Hani Thayer, much like all the few Arab Ahmadis, maybe there's 300, right? They can't read Urdu.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't even know, and their English is not that good either. So the English translations aren't really, you know what I mean? So they don't even know who he is. So Hani Thayer started asking questions about who this guy is and his many contradictions. And that's how he came to the truth, brother.
Yeah, so I just want to give a shout out to Abdul Ghani. He gave me a super chat here and he says, I'd like to hear more about Schrodinger's Muslim Dr. Abdul Salam.
Oh, brother, I've written my most famous essay is about Dr. Abdul Salam and white women. That's where you got the picture from, right?
Yeah.
Remember, I'm the one who found that picture before anyone found it. I posted it. They all got mad at me. You know what I mean? Oh, and we can do that on like the next show or whenever. But this guy, I got so much material on him, brother. It's that's my most viewed essay. I think over like 50,000 views on that one essay.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll probably just for Abdul Ghani, we'll dedicate a show to that. Where we'll go through the essay and kind of highlight the important parts, and we'll do that. And in the meantime, what we can do is we can link to the link in the description, so you can
I'm
take.
about to post it. I'm about to post it right now.
We'll put that. So Abdul Ghani, just because of that suggestion and super chat, we're gonna go ahead and make sure we record our next episode on that specific topic. So we'll do that, inshallah.
Yeah, and it's so funny. In the meantime, all he's got to do is YouTube search Dr. Abdul Salam's drinking problem, and he will see the guy he won the Nobel Prize with. I can't remember his name. He said when he first met Dr. Abdul Salam, he had a bottle of scotch in his drawer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you told me about that. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, Abdul Ghani, we're gonna make a separate video about this, inshallah. We're gonna do that eventually. Yeah, because right now it'll just be too overextended when we're getting ready to wind down. But yeah, we're gonna do that for sure. We're gonna make a video, and I think we're gonna link the article as well in the description, so that way you can check it out if you haven't checked it out yet already. But Jazakallah khair for the question and the suggestion. So we're going to ahead and do that. So brother, do you have any closing comments about the allegations or Qasim Rashid before we wrap up here?
Yeah. Because he had three questions he wanted to ask me. The second one was about the only college-educated son of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. He was named Mirza Bashir Ahmad, same name as me, kind of, sort of. But he wrote a book called Kalimat al-Fasl in 1916. And this book, he directly did a takfir. He said Mirza Ghulam Ahmad is a prophet. Anyone who doesn't accept him is not a Muslim. He said that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's in the kalima, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. They said the word Muhammad, peace be upon him, in that context includes 124,000 prophets, which is also includes Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. So he said, oh, can you read some other page? Brother, if you can translate it for us. I'm looking for material. I'm trying to piece this book together. I'm working on 15 to 20 projects, research projects on Ahmadiyya, not to mention I work a job, right? And I have kids. I look for people who transliterate, because then we know what the translation really is. Yeah, so post your data and then I'll respond to it. Why this competition, right? And then the third thing okay, remember in 2018, I saw him in public and I said Assalamu alaikum. I put my hand out. He took me to court. He started yelling for the police and took me to court. And then he's mad that I bring up that he hired Ahmadis over other people, qualified people. He discriminated in hiring. He did this, right? And he paid them cash under the table, which is illegal. You like, I got the emails. When I forwarded him the email, then he immediately said he's being harassed. Harassed? You paid these guys cash under the table for years. He's still doing it with his current employees. I knew an MD who didn't want to pay child support because his wife was a Christian, and he paid him cash under the table so as to avoid child support. And this guy never paid child support, not even $1 for his daughters, and he helped him. Some guy converted to Ahmadiyya, he refinanced his house. So what you're talking about, the politicians, they're willing to do way more than that, brother. Way, way more than that. So those are my final words. I still got love for you, Kiki, Damon, and Ruzzy. All you guys, just be normal. Talk to me like normal. It's okay, brother. I got love for y'all. If I see y'all, I'll shake your hand. Whether we have a beef or not, I'll say assalamu alaikum no matter what, and that we keep it moving, brother. This is what we do.
Hopefully they won't call the cops.
And then they call the police. I felt like Tupac's hit him up. I call the cops when you see Tupac. That's what they do to me, brother. Every time they see me, they call. I'm like, every time when anyone mentions the cops, I immediately put my hands up, brother. Like, tell them don't shoot.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, it's always been a pleasure, brother. I'm glad. Unfortunately, we couldn't have the discussion that we wanted to have with the guest. Apparently, he threatened some legal action, so we couldn't do that, unfortunately. But nonetheless, it was a pleasure to talk about this. So, and I hope we were able to get into the questions of why, it's not a good idea to vote for Qasim Rashid if you are even thinking about voting in that area or supporting him. But nonetheless, make sure you check out the brother's YouTube channel. I have it all in the description as well too. But just so you guys know, it is it's Ahmadiyya Fact Check blog, which is on YouTube. Twitter is Bashir _Shah. Also in the description down below. And his website is Ahmadiyya Fact checkblog.com. So make sure you check out all that stuff and subscribe to him, as well as subscribe to my channel. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit the like button on this video because it does help us, and also hit the bell so we get you guys will get notified every time we go live as well too. And consider joining Patreon and becoming a YouTube member. Just as a final reminder, this episode is brought to you by Arabic Grammar Unlocked, which is a book based on the classical text of Al-Ajrumiyya, which helps you understand the grammar of the Arabic language. If you are struggling with that, most people have problems with this after going through the basics of the Arabic language, like the Medina books or Kitab Asasi or the Ibn Saud books or whatever it may be. They have trouble with this, but make sure you check this out and check out the link down below on Amazon, and you'll be able to see and order the book directly as well too. With all that aside, we thank you for joining us today, your Sunday, and gracing us with your presence, and the audience as well too. So until next time, let's talk about it. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.